Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, friend. It is your host, Lara Jane, and I am here with my new friend. Sunday's here to play with us today. I love playing with my friends. Hey, Cindy, we are going to talk about calming our nervous system. And I love that because I'm not always anxious or all these things that our nervous system does, but I definitely have triggers that hit that nervous and I just like crawling out my skin. And I know our other friend is just like us. So I want you to help us figure out how to take that calming approach to get some deep peace when our nervous system decides it's time to just go crazy. So welcome to the show, Sunday. Help our listener calm their nervous system.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, one thing I'd like to say about why our nervous systems go off is that we live in a culture that kind of encourages that and even kind of glorifies it a little bit. You know, like go the extra mile, push, 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 which, as both of us know, can also lead to burnout as well as, excellent performance. So it is kind of a balance. And something that, for me, the reason why I got so hyped on all of this is because I burned myself out to the point of having one of those mystery illnesses where basically every system in your body goes down. And this is, it's like, this is something that I wasn't able to find really any outside help for because doctors don't really understand these illnesses. It's like some of them don't even admit that they actually exist. But, when you're lying plastered on your bed, unable to think, speak, or, even stand up, you kind of realize, yes, they do exist. Yeah. People with long COVID might relate to this because it's very similar kind of symptoms. Or just people who are, you don't have to have the illnesses to get to the point where you're pushing yourself and your nervous system way too far. Because that is, again, what our culture says, like go, 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 push, 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 do the extra mile. If you have a job, well, why not have a hobby and, a few kids to take care of and, another side hustle. And, it's like, it can get kind of ridiculous. And one thing that I find really fundamental is I also talk about calming body chemistry because this is something I found out in the process of healing my illness and, which is still ongoing, by the way. But our nervous systems, our body chemistry, and our immune systems, they're basically just three parts of the same thing. So whatever you do to one affects the other. And that could be scary news, but it's also encouraging news because it gives us agency if we look at it properly.
So it was that which three systems do they work in tandem, or at least as one changes, they all change?
Yeah, it's our immune system, our body chemistry, which is our endocrine system, but also a bunch of other stuff with having to do with metabolic pathways, which I don't know enough to tell about, except for if when they're messed up, it's a bad idea. And our nervous system. Okay. So they all interact. And here's the thing that gives us agency. The secret thing that gives us agency that I found out from reading Candace Pert, who was a neuroscientist and also a cell biologist. And her discovery was that our emotions and our body chemistry are also the same thing. So if you want to think of it as four things that work together, that's emotions, body chemistry, immune system, nervous system. So when we can change our emotions, for instance, we can change our body chemistry and also the other way around. So this gives us access to areas that a lot of not only mystery illnesses, but people just who have chronic pain or people who just feel like chronically stressed all the time. These are things that are helpful to know because this is a way that you can actually have some agency instead of just feeling like, oh, well, everything has to come at me and then I collapse, which is kind of our social model. It's like run, 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 collapse, and then run, run, run again.
Well, yeah, because you're being weak if you take a break in between your running before you collapse. That's just not right. So how do you speak to these different systems? Do you speak to them differently, or is it just the way we process things? But like, say my nervous system is going crazy. I'm having a panic attack or something. How do I change it or my body chemistry, or, what do I help change to bring that into alignment so that I'm not overly panicked? I mean, panic's okay. It keeps us safe, right? But when it takes over and I no longer have rational thought, or I'm just a basket case, that's when it's no fun anymore.
No, it's no fun anymore. And I would answer your question on sort of two levels. One is like the immediate situation, like if you're feeling, like really triggered or panicky or whatever. And I agree with you, like panic has its uses when it's true panic. But unfortunately, we were actually designed to just panic a little, and then our body chemistry kind of goes into fight flight. So, we were meant to run away from the lion or the bear or whatever it is. The fight flight sends all of our energy into our muscles. And by the way, makes us really stupid in the head because like that energy goes into the muscles. And then we run. And then, after we're away from the danger, then we're supposed to calm down. But unfortunately, in this culture, what often doesn't happen is the calm down part. We just go on to the next thing that might be sort of triggering us. So in the immediate situation, there are things that you can do. You can breathe diaphragmatically, which means you're using your whole lungs. So one easy way to do that is just breathe through your nose, which is actually healthier anyway for a number of reasons. Another thing that you can do that's kind of inconspicuous for the like immediate situation is you can put your hand over your heart, because that aligns the electromagnetic field of your brain with the electromagnetic field of your heart. And you can see this in a lot of ancient traditions. And also the Heart Math Institute in Santa Cruz has done studies on this, where they did, scientifically registered that this happens, that the biofields align. And there was also a story about a guy from Heart Math who was lecturing, I think, somewhere in Europe. And there was a man in the audience who was like really upset and started like acting out and yelling and stuff. And so the security came to haul him away. And the speaker said, well, okay, don't take him all the way out. Just stick him in the lobby. I want to try an experiment. So he had everybody in the room put their hands over their hearts so that they had a bunch of people aligning their fields. And then after a few minutes of that, he asked for the man to be brought in again. And the man came in and he was like kind of dumbfounded because he said, I'm still angry, but I can't do anything about it. So this can have like a real strong impression.
So I can't do anything about it would mean to me like I wouldn't be able to control my anger, or I wouldn't be able to get rid of it. But it sounds more like he was no longer needing to respond to it. Like I feel angry, but I now don't feel the need to lash out and share the anger with others. But it's like, I think I don't know. We still have that control. You don't lose all the control, but you just choose a different path.
Yeah, I think that's basically it. You reroute. And this is where the neural repatterning comes in, actually, because you can choose to take another route. And the more often you do that, the easier it will be. But yes, you're right. I might have said that in a less than clear manner, but you got what I
was just trying to think through it. Is like, I haven't heard that study, so I was just trying to process it through. But I love that, when we do things in love, and I know that sounds really, because so many of us don't really know love. But when you truly do something without condition, how much easier it is to accept the response because you weren't expecting any one response or another. It was just okay. It was just okay to be there. And so I like that process of that breathing through your nose and just calming and allowing life to go on. So it is a good way to just settle in.
Yeah. And I think that you kind of put your finger on a really key element of healing, which I often still stumble over, which is that you kind of have to not have particular expectations. I mean, you can sort of head in a general direction, but when I do healing work on myself or other people, I don't know exactly what's going to happen because I'm working with the energy of, well, like you would say, love. It's like the energy of, sort of like a lot of the land spirits that I know, and the star spirits and planet spirits and all those. And it's not as if I can actually control them. It's just I'm asking them to help out and do what they do. And we're so all in each of us as individuals. So, you're an individual person and you're going to respond to something differently than I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. Even if we grew up in the same household, you didn't grow up the same. We have different experiences. We had different siblings because who was my sibling? I wasn't. They weren't that same sibling to themselves. And so it doesn't matter how close or how controlled our upbringing was, we still were brought up differently and we still have different responses to different triggers. And it's learning that those can be controlled. It doesn't have to be a reaction. So many times we just lash with a reaction instead of processing it and responding to it. And I think part of that is when I get in that fight or flight mode, I don't have a rational brain. And you called it, it's the stupid brain. It's like everything goes to fight. And when you're in that, do you have any tricks to just kind of like grab onto it and pull it back? Because I think sometimes we don't realize where it's going until it's full-fledged anxiety or panic and you're just in the heat of it. And when rational mind's gone, how do I grab it? How do I turn that around at that point?
Okay, well, you open the door to a lot of stuff because that's an area I'm really big on. How you do it is, you have the immediate, sort of stopgap measures like we just talked about. But how you do that is you basically repattern your system so that you aren't so easily triggered. And that takes time. It's like learning an instrument or something like that. You're used to having the certain kinds of responses that you have, and you have to kind of reroute those into a different pattern. So it's like instead of, walking down one sidewalk, you go a street over and walk down another sidewalk, But you have to train yourself a little bit for that. And the best time to do that is when you're not so triggered, Mm-hmm. This is what I use energy healing for is a lot. And I do recordings of energy healing that people can kind of crank so that, and they're silent. So most of them are silent. Some of them have natural sounds on them so that you can sort of train your system in a way into the new patterns. And I also give people practices because I don't want it to be a passive thing. But I do think that, people are busy and also, sort of like a lot of people don't have 20 years to learn the deep meditation technique that will get them there. So what I offer is kind of training wheels, but plus practices, because if you're not involved in your own healing, it's not going to work too well. You can't just, yeah.
And while you're talking, I'm thinking of this analogy of going to the gym. And if you have 100-pound anxiety attacks You've got to get to the gym and you've got to get practice and you've got to be able to lift that 100 pounds. And you might start out at 10 and a month later you're at 20. And soon you're lifting in a capacity that when that 100-pound stress thing triggers you, you now have that coping mechanism. So instead of going to the gym and lifting weights, we're going to meditate. And I'm going to learn to quiet my mind when I'm not in the panic, when I still have that rational thread. Because as I learn to accelerate, to move it down when I don't need it, it's going to be that much stronger when I do. And I think one of the best things is having someone in your court that can see that you're in that panic mode and rationally talk you down. I had a friend the other day that I missed the opportunity. Their family was kind of trying to help them out of a panic attack. And afterwards, I really should have stepped in because they were like, Mom, just stop it. This is silly. And the second you start adding that pressure of, hey, you're being irrational. Hey, you're doing this. All of a sudden you start panicking more. And now you're worried about how people are thinking about you, along with the thing that triggered the panic, along with everything else. And I thought, why didn't I just step in and say, hey, can you tell me something? What's your favorite color? And start just regrounding them, taking them out of that path of panic to just let your brain think for one moment, what is your favorite color? Describe that. Where have you seen that? Start tuning into something that's positive. And I just let her have a panic attack. I was so rude. But I it's like I could help someone else in the midst of a panic attack reroute and come down. But I don't do that when it's my own. And that's through meditation that can help me. But I still hit that panic, that it still gets to a point where I really have to fight to have that rational brain to bring it back. But Sunday, I want to take a quick break. I want to have let our sponsor just bring in a little quick word. When we come back, I really want to talk about that practice. Like, how can I just snap myself out of it? I know some people tap. I know some people, just get up and do the hokey pokey, just to change where their brain is at. So what are your recommendations to harness that? I'm in the panic mode. So we'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice. Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
Hey, Sunday, I'm back. This is so much fun. I know that our friend here with us has suffered a panic attack or two, and I know I have. Sounds like you have had your share too. So how do you capture it when it's in that heat of the moment? How do I get my rational brain out enough to start pulling it in?
Well, again, I loved what you use the gym metaphor, because it's sort of like you have to go into training to get good at it, and certainly you can always use, there are always certain things that you can use, like the breathing thing and the hand over the heart thing, that will help in the moment. But I want to address the reason why it's so difficult to get out of these panic attacks, or just the sense of like, I have too much to do and I don't have enough time to do it in, which is its own thing, which kind of drives us there. And that is that there is a chemical thing happening. And if we don't understand the chemical thing happening, we kind of don't understand the addictive nature of this. And we kind of feel like, oh, it's, I'm doing something wrong. It's my fault, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you don't understand that your body chemistry is doing some things that are going to be kind of keeping you in that loop, then you're not going to be able to change it. So I want to go into that just a little bit. So we talked earlier about the fight flight response. Yeah. And what happens when that is triggered is that basically your nervous system registers it, and it goes as a nervous signal into your hypothalamus, which is part of your brain. And your hypothalamus is sort of this magical little organ that changes the nervous message, the nerve signal, into chemistry, and it drips that chemistry down on the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland being the master gland of the endocrine system, and it will send a message to your adrenals to pump out cortisol and adrenaline and all kinds of that other stuff. Okay, so, if that happens in the way that I was talking about earlier, where, it's sort of like the danger is physical, we recognize the danger, we run away from the danger, or we fight it, and then it's over. Well, then, then that whole system shuts off and we have our normal body chemistry again, and we can be sane and rational. Yeah. But, and also irrational, because I don't think rationality is the end all and be all, but it's very helpful in many situations. I will say that. So what happens, unfortunately, in this culture is because we have this sort of push, 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 go, go, go ethos, that we're even glorify. I mean, people brag about how little they sleep, which strikes me as being insane, but, it happens. So what happens is that we're constantly triggering this cycle over and over of nerve signal goes into hypothalamus, goes into pituitary, goes into adrenals, and they're always cranking out this cortisol and this adrenaline and so forth. And then what happens is our cell receptors, which are designed to take in those elements and, use them in a specific way, they get kind of overloaded. So they shut their little hatches. And then what happens is the pituitary gland gets the message, oh, cells are not getting any cortisol. Better pump out more cortisol. So that's the addictive thing that keeps you going.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I've always thought if I could just take the wire off of that light switch. But then there's sometimes it's dark and I need the light. I just don't need it all the time. And it's like, it's a real fun balance to learn all of the pieces. And I know that you help people with just that whole nervous system process. And how long does it usually take for someone to gain control of, and then control actually makes it sound like bad, but when we start allowing our nervous systems and our immune systems and our bodies to do their thing, it's allowing it to be its balance that desensitizes that trigger also, where all of a sudden, because I'm not overly worried of the natural balance of my body, I'm not trying to control it. And when I'm not trying to control it, it's not going to flare up. And so I think it's a real key part of learning to experience what's going on. And that's hard.
It is, because it goes against a lot of what people, in our culture tell us is the right thing to do. And that can be very difficult, especially if we're used to doing the right thing, I love that you kind of pulled yourself back from saying control, because it is something that we tend to go to, but unfortunately, control is sort of part of that fight flight thing. So we might want to just only use control when we really need it. I mean, having control of, say, your bladder is a very good thing. I really, I appreciate that a lot, but trying to control everything is not feasible. And it also sets us into this really bad cycle of having, lots of inflammation in our bodies, because that's what the cortisol and adrenaline and so forth do, is they give us inflammation. And when it becomes constant, then we can start having health problems. And we definitely will have emotional issues, because, we're not going to be in a very calm situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if we're in the midst of, we can feel our nervous system starting to tense, whether it's our breathing. And so if we just put our hand on our heart and just breathe. That's all it's needed.
Yeah. And we can develop skills and tools to get, even sort of regulate things even more, to allow things to be even calmer as we build we have the immediate tools, but if we have the tools and skills to begin to really allow our systems to go on a new pathway, we were talking about the neural, and that is literal, the neural pathways actually develop and some of them kind of fade away when you begin to do this kind of work. So the gym analogy is really good because it does happen over time, but you can also feel the difference. Like for me, one of the things that's really amazing is that, I'm an empath, and I'm guessing your listener might also be one of those, or at least a very sensitive person. So when you pick up other stuff, it kind of tends to sort of roil you, and you get confused as to like what's yours and what's theirs and what's around you. And, because you can pick it up even from buildings or, places. So I think that one of the things that's really amazing to me is that I still do that, but I don't do it in a way that feels burdensome. Or if it does, I can, use one of my processes, and things that used to be like, me taking walks and journaling for days, it'd be like 5 minutes, and I'm back again. So I think this is an encouraging thing for people, is that is possible, because a lot of times we're taught, you're sensitive, too bad. It's just the burden you have to bear for being so sweet and nice and creative and all of that. I say,
get a backbone. No, I'm just kidding. I started thinking about when we were talking about going to the gym and stuff, and I'm thinking about marathon runners and their training process. And you run this many miles at this day, and this many miles this day, and this many, and they're never the same. They're never the whole 26 point whatever miles you run when you actually run the marathon. They're all a little bit shorter, but they all are training you to be ready for that longer run. And if we are preparing our mind the same way a marathon runner prepares its body, we're doing our meditation, we're doing our calming exercises, we're doing those things that build a strong mind, so that when we do have the panic attack, we have the stamina to run with it and to let it happen without it dropping us to our knees too soon. And it's just, we've built up that ability to cope. And coping is just kind of sounds like the give up word, but it's the allowing word in this case, where we allow it to exist and to understand where it came from and to know that we're going to be okay. I think most of it is we don't know we're going to be okay. We don't trust the future. And so it makes us panic. And just learning to trust what's going to come next. Wow, craziness is happening. It's like having the right people around you, for me, has been a blessing, because you don't get shamed. It's like it is hard enough to have these things in your life, but to add that shame on top as I'm not good as the other people, or I'm not, I can't handle or cope with life as the same as somebody else. And I want to remind our friend out there that we cannot compare the moment that we're feeling frustrated right now with somebody else's right now moment. We do not see them 24 hours a day. We hide our own crap. So do they. And so you cannot compare what you see with somebody else. So they're not better off than you are. You're just not seeing it.
That is such a great thing to say, and I so agree. There's a holy woman from India who gives people hugs, and that's sort of like her thing, and everybody gets all blissful and everything. But I understand from the people who work with her that she can be grumpy sometimes. And, I totally understand it if you're giving hundreds of people hugs in a day. So yeah, we all have that. And I think it's such a relief, honestly, to drop the idea that anybody can be perfect as a human being, because none of us can be. But for some reason, I can go into why I think why, but I won't. We're often driven to pretend that we're perfect, to put on a front. And that kind of takes us away from our authentic selves, which I think is part of the reason why we get burned out. Because if you feel like you're obliged to put on a certain persona all the time, or at least all the time you're in public, it's very exhausting, actually. It's a lot of energy. And so it's like, along with the inflammation of being triggered, you're kind of leaking energy for doing that. And it's also considered normal. So it's like, that's what you're supposed to do, right?
You're a warrior king if you can do this. I mean, you do get, I loved your analogies earlier about bragging about not sleeping. And I've been caught in that where, oh my God, I only had 2-3, hours of sleep last night and I'm exhausted. Why do I tell anybody? Why does it matter? Am I trying to do an excuse for being tired, or am I trying to be impressive for having such stamina that I can come back to work the next day? What is my thought process? Because I know you can't answer that, but it's why do we feel like it's a badge of honor to not sleep? Why do we feel like it's a badge of honor to be so busy we don't have time for ourselves? Why do we feel it's a badge of honor to be so stressed? Because in today's society, those things are rewarded. For that person who chops and 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 chops the tree and just keeps going at it. And we say, good job, way to go, let's keep doing this. But there's one guy that's sitting down and sharpening his saw, and he gets back up and he chops down 10 times more. And then he sits down, and we are so trained on rewarding the journey instead of what we did with it, that we are not seeing the benefit of the person taking the time to sharpen the saw. We're not seeing the benefit of that extra hour of sleep because it's so glorious to have overextended. We get rewarded for it in other ways.
Yeah, that is so well put. And I think it brings, again, the whole, the idea of the word control. It's sort of like we're supposed to be able to control all this stuff. We're supposed to be able to control what we do in our environment and the whole thing. And no wonder we go nuts trying to do that, because it's totally impossible.
Yeah, I've been nuts lots of times. My husband sometimes says it's all the time, but we're not going to listen to him.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Because he's probably nuts too. So
It has to be married to me, right? At least that's what he told me. No. Oh, Sunday, this has been great. And I think, if nothing else that our friend takes away from this episode is just that one calming breathing. And I'm serious, like I did it for that half a second here on the show, and it was so overwhelmingly peaceful of just allowing those energies to synchronize within your body. And if you learn nothing else from this episode, then to place your hand on your heart and just breathe through your nose a few times and just feel the power of the breath and life. And life can be so simple.
It can. And there's something I'd like to do that might be an addition to that. I can do an energetic healing piece here.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is one of the first ones I devised for myself. And I think that it's really handy for a lot of people, because basically it has to do with helping when you feel like there's too much stuff coming at you, like it's just like overload, overwhelm, all of that. I call it calm outside nervous system, because my understanding is that our electromagnetic field is also part of our nervous systems. So we have them inside and outside. And it's the outside ones that kind of pick up the messages from around us. And especially if we're sensitive, it will do that. There's actually, even decades ago in psychology, they did experiments with people where they had sensors on their brain waves, And when one person meets another, our brainwaves change. And it's not like, that person has put little prods into our brains or anything like that. It's because that field between us is sending messages back and forth. That's the outside nervous system. And, that's one way of calling it. You can call it a lot of names. But that's just one way I look at it. So this energy healing piece that I'm going to do, it's going to be silent because I mostly work silently because I found it's really efficient, and I'm big on efficiency in some ways, not in all. And so what I'd like you to do is to just be as comfortable and as relaxed as you can in this moment. And if you don't feel perfectly...
I have a quick question.
Okay.
If our listeners driving, can they do this, or do they need to pause and do it when they get...
Very, very good thing to bring up. Yes. No, if you're driving or you're using power tools or you're doing anything where spacing out for a while would hurt you or somebody else, yeah. Turn this off at this point and save it till later. It would be a nice thing for when you get home.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yes, I just want to make sure if we're driving down the road, we're going to be safe. So let's go ahead. For those who haven't paused, let's go ahead and go through the process.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that, because I do not want anyone to get hurt in this process. Yeah, for those who are in a place where it's safe, if you space out for a bit, I would say just relax and be as comfortable as you can. And yes, shutting your eyes like Laura Jane is doing is helpful, because the show is going to happen inside you. What I'm going to do is very boring to look at. I'm going to be shutting my eyes and being silent. So check in just for a moment to what your thoughts are and what your emotions are and what your body sensations are. And here we go. I'll let you know when it's over. Okay. So once again, check in with your emotions and your thoughts and your body sensations. And if you notice any changes that you like, maybe take a moment to just savor them a bit, to take them in, because that will integrate them into your nervous system. So would you like to say anything that you noticed that was different?
I think for me, I've got company in and out today, and it definitely distracted me from the hustle bustle of what's going on outside of my head and brought me inside. So I was able to spend a moment with Laura Jane and not everything else that was going on.
Cool. Yeah, I offer a recording of that for free on my website if people sign up to my email list, and they get the recording, which is a silent recording, which I know is a little strange to some people, but it nonetheless works. And they'll also get a series of emails kind of teaching them a little about how to use it to the best advantage. And also, it's honestly kind of a beginner's training in energy healing, because I kind of can't do healing without teaching about it, because I think that people really kind of need to, I mean, I don't think healing is fully I don't think you're doing your job right as a healer if you're not teaching people how to kind of do their own version of it.
My thought about energy healing is we are the conduit, and we can direct, we can put energy whatever direction we are choosing, but it's the vessel that needs to do the healing, and they have to allow that power in. And so as long as you're, I don't know what to call them, patient, as long as your client has an open mind and is willing to allow the energy to heal it, then the conduit, as in the energy healer, is there to help you receive it. I love energy healers. I choose not to try to do my own healing. I think it's more powerful when I'm getting a third party involved. But you do have the power to do all of it yourself. You do have the power to heal yourself, and you don't need anybody else. But it is so, for me, when I'm going through a guided process, it takes my brain out of the situation and allows the energy to heal and to go through my body. And so I recommend having a guide, having someone to take you into that process and to help shine the energy in the areas of your body that need the most balancing. And so I highly recommend it, but I also know that you have the power. You as the listener, you, my friend, can do this. And so if you need some additional coaching, someone to walk through the processes, we've got Sunday here. All of her contact information is in the show notes, and you can reach right out to her or go to that, get the silent recording. I love the silent recording because it is the energy that it's recorded with. It's not the words. And that energy is, I know, sounds hokey pokey, but yes, you can capture the energy of silence in a recording, and it can go to the world. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's, until you learn to trust the universe and those processes, it may feel very foreign. But Sunday and I are not medical or mental professionals. We are here for entertainment, people that have experienced some tough times in life. People have found ways to overcome it. And if there's anything we can do to help you not go through the same stuff or to help you go through it smoother, we're here for you. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, Sunday.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.